So, how much of Ireland can you really see in one day and have a great experience? Today, we're going to talk about decluttering your vacation itinerary. Hey, thanks for joining me so much here on the Traveling in Ireland podcast. Today, we're going to talk about decluttering your itinerary. And I know that sounds a little weird to say it that way, like it's some overstuffed room in your house. But really, when you look at a lot of itineraries, they feel a little bit like that overstuffed room. There's just so much in there that you can't use it all. You can't get to it all. Some of it gets shoved in a corner and squished. It's just kind of sometimes a mess. So we're going to dig into that today. No pun intended. Now, one of my favorite things to do is to work directly with people in vacation coaching sessions. Now, these 30-minute sessions are times where we parse through what's already planned. So somebody comes to me with a partial vacation plan, or they know where they're staying, but they're not sure what to do from that area. So we personalize it working together. I find out the group dynamics, the interests, the hobbies, things like that. And we put it all together in a way that each day is laid out with enough time to include all the must-do activities that they have on their list, but still leaving in the flexibility to enjoy something unplanned. But more often than not, I find myself saying the same thing. And it's something that you've heard many, many times here on the podcast. And that is, you can't do it all. So my goal is to help you, whether we work together or whether you just listen to the podcast and really pull in all of the advice I give. But my main goal is to help you make your itinerary something that ticks all your boxes, but doesn't run you ragged. One of the questions I get asked a lot is, how much can I do in one day in Ireland? So I figured that was probably a really great place to focus on in this podcast. Now, before I kind of launch into the answer, I'm going to give you a few references to go back and have a listen to help you as you work on your itinerary journey. So in podcast 132, I shared 4 tips to help you create your perfect itinerary. You can always grab one of my free itineraries if you need inspiration, and you'll find those at irelandfamilyvacations.com/plan, PLAN. And if you're starting your itinerary planning at the very beginning, you're going to want to go back and follow my step-by-step guide to planning your Ireland vacation. Now, that is an entire series that started at episode 125, but you can find it all laid out on the website at irelandfamilyvacations.com/planning. So PLANNING. All right. So how much you can see and do in Ireland is completely dependent on where you are. And I know that that's like not helpful, right? But the fact is that the number of attractions that you can visit is directly impacted by where you are, how far you have to travel, and how long things take. So if you're in Dublin, the attractions that you're going to want to visit are usually right within walking distance. So you can get 3 or 4 major attractions in Dublin in one day. You're going to be busy, but it's totally doable. Whereas, let's say you are staying in Killarney. Well, the only thing you're getting in that day, if you want to get out on the Skellig Ring, is the Ring of Kerry. That is an all-day trip. So again, it's really kind of dependent on where you are and how far you have to travel. If you're hopping from place to place, let's say that you're traveling from Kilkenny to Killarney, you have both the amount of time spent driving and the amount of time spent at an attraction to figure in as well. So on that route between Kilkenny and Killarney, the two main stops, or three main stops, are the Rock of Cashel, Cahir Castle, and some people will swing over to Blarney, so they'll skip Cahir because you just don't have time to do all three based on the opening hours. So it's the Rock of Cashel and Blarney Castle or Cahir Castle, and then you're on to Killarney, and that's a full day. So those are kind of things that you need to be aware of. I talk about drive times in the transportation podcast, and that is part of that planning series. So if you haven't listened to that one, go back and get the tips out of it. So because things can be so location based, what I decided to do, instead of saying how much can you see in Ireland in a day, I wanted to give you kind of the recommended amount of time to spend in popular Irish locations. Now, each of these locations you can do in less time, and you can definitely do in more time. But what I'm going to offer you today is the minimum amount of time I recommend for each. And it's probably going to be more time than you think. So let's jump into this. In Dublin, I think a day and a half, so basically 2 nights, is perfect. So you're looking at either the day you arrive plus an additional day, or you arrive midday, 2 days prior to your departure, and spend the full day prior to your departure in the city. So that gives you 2 nights and about a day and a half, depending on your arrival time in Dublin. This gives you plenty of time to explore the city center thoroughly, and then visit the top 3 or 4 attractions on your list. Now, if you want to day tour out of Dublin, you would want additional days. So this is why so many people will choose Dublin as a base and tour out of it. Because if you want to tour Glendalough and Powerscourt and County Wicklow, that's a day. If you want to day tour to Kilkenny and enjoy Kilkenny City, that's a day. If you want to day trip the Boyne Valley, so we're talking Newgrange, Trim Castle, the Hill of Tara, that's 1 day. And if you wanted to do Malahide or Howth, each of those are half a day. So you could very easily spend a week in Dublin and make it a base as you day trip out to those locations that I just mentioned. Now, Galway City, the highlights of Galway City are in one really small area. I personally think Galway City can be kind of explored in less than a day. It's a great place for nightlife. If you are a nightlife person, stay there. You will thoroughly enjoy it. But if you aren't, I think you can do Galway in an afternoon and head out of town. If you want to stay in Galway and tour from there, and you plan to use it as a base for the Burren and the Cliffs of Moher, that's a day. If you want to use it as your base and head out to the Aran Islands, that's a day in itself. And then Connemara, the far west of County Galway, also a day. So those 3 areas, each on their own, full day in each. Now, speaking of that Burren, Cliffs of Moher area, if you plan to stay, let's say Doolin or one of the other towns in that area, I think 2 days for exploring. So you arrive on day 1, spend at least 1 night, and then dig into that area more thoroughly on day 2, because there are some really great activities in that area that can take a good chunk of the day, like the Alwee Burren experience. If you do the falconry, the Birds of Prey exhibition, and then the Hawk Walk and the cave, that is a full morning or full afternoon. If you do Cairconnell Stone Fort, that's a couple hours. Maybe you want to have an experience at the Burren Perfumery, or you want to take a hike, like the Loch of Vela Loop in the Burren is a beautiful hike. So those are, that's an hour and a half, 2 hours. So to really dig into the Burren area thoroughly, I think can take a couple days. Now, you would want to add an additional day each if you plan to visit the Aran Islands or Bunratty Castle and Folk Park from the Burren area. And I have a free Burren itinerary. You can grab that online at irelandfamilyvacations.com/Burren, Burren. And that's going to give you more information about how you can base your vacation in that area, because there are some other places that you can visit pretty easily from there. So you could make a full vacation out of staying in the Burren as well. Moving on to Killarney. The absolute minimum of time that I recommend in Killarney is 2 days and 2 nights, because this area is packed with activities and attractions. In the immediate Killarney area, you have the town. So Killarney is a bustling town. It has terrific pubs, great restaurants, and loads of shops. You have Killarney National Park, which is a 25,000 acre park full of mountains, moors, lakes, waterfalls, beautiful waterfalls. And then you also have Muckross House, Muckross Abbey, and Ross Castle within the national park. And then right outside of the town, you have the Gap of Dunlow, which is a spectacular mountain pass. It's perfect for a day-long hike or a cycling adventure if you are an experienced rider. They also have kind of a hike and boat experience that you hike out to Lord Brandon's cottage. You take a boat back across the lakes of Killarney to Ross Castle. So again, I think that is 4.5 hours to do that. So lots to do just right in that area. Now, if you plan to stay around the Killarney area to drive the Ring of Kerry, that is a full day. The Dingle Peninsula, that's another day trip out of Killarney. It's about 2 hours down there, maybe 4 hours or so to drive and experience Schley Head, and then back across Connor Pass. So you're looking at least a 5 to 6 hour day for that. And then if the Skellig Islands are on your itinerary, if you've got your boat trip booked, you need to add another full day for that, either returning to Killarney after your trip or staying somewhere down there along that Ring of Kerry. So again, Killarney is another place that you could very easily spend an entire vacation. And you're really going to feel like you had every Ireland experience there is. The city of Kilkenny, beautiful medieval city, deserves a full day of exploration. It's not, in my opinion, a pass-through area. There's quite a lot to do in the city, and it really is just a beautiful, walkable city to enjoy. It's also a great base for touring sites in Tipperary if your itinerary doesn't have you visiting the Rock of Cashel or Cahir Castle en route to other locations. So if you're going to use it as a base for that, you would add another day. Moving up to Northern Ireland, I think that to fully experience that Causeway Coast, you need at least 2 days, but 3 is better. That would give you 1 day for Belfast, 1 day for that stretch from Belfast to Bushmills, and then a 3rd day for the Bushmills to Derry portion of the route. I think taking that slow and being able to get out and wander and explore is just an absolutely terrific way to really immerse yourself in that scenery and the stories of that area. Especially if you're a Game of Thrones fan, if that's your jam, that's a couple days right there, getting all those Game of Thrones sites and really enjoying them. If you want to explore the Inishowen Peninsula from Derry, so that's that furthest northerly part of Ireland, beautiful peninsula, very, very remote. That is a full day. It's 100 miles all the way around and very easy to tour from Derry. But again, it's a full day. Now, I do have a lot of people who will lump Mayo, Sligo, and Donegal, so those northwestern counties of Ireland, all together into one drive-through area between Galway and Derry. That is a lot of ground to cover. And if you're going to cover it in a day, you're on the motorway, you're not seeing anything at all. So if you want to drive that and have those beautiful coastal views, you need to allow yourself at least one overnight stay along the route. But to really enjoy that area and follow the coast, 3 days, I think, is about the minimum to get that beautiful Wild Atlantic Way experience up there. And then I can't end without talking about Southeast Ireland. This is another area that's often treated as a pass-through if people even get there. So the counties of Wexford and Waterford, a lot of people will go into Waterford City and see the Waterford Crystal experience and leave. And there is so much to this beautiful, sunny Southeast area. So if you can, I recommend taking your time and allowing for at least an overnight. You have, again, more coast, always the coast, but Ireland's oldest lighthouse. The museums in Waterford are some of the best you're going to find in the country. The Museum of Time is spectacular. I never thought I'd say that about a museum filled with clocks, but just absolutely amazing. And then you have that, the Waterford Greenway is down there, and the Copper Coast, all the history of that area. So it's an absolutely stunning area. One of my favorite cliff walks is there in Ardmore. So it's an amazing area to spend a little bit of time. Now, all the suggestions I've given you are based on over 20 years of experience of traveling to and through Ireland. And while I completely understand that you're not likely to devote your entire life to exploring the country thoroughly, I also know that, so again, like I said, this is based on my experiences. So the first few times I went to Ireland, I was just zipping all over the country. And while I had some great memories and good experiences, my experiences were so much better when I slowed down. So if you trust no other advice I give you ever, trust this. You are not going to miss the places that you didn't visit, but you may always regret cutting short an amazing experience because you have to stick to a rigid schedule. I'm not sure, but I think I might have ended that with a mic drop. So definitely keep these tips in mind. Obviously, they are not meant to be rigid. They are not meant to be your plan, but they're just a really good indicator for when you're making your plans of how much time you may want to spend in an area to get that full experience that I know so many people hope to get when they're in Ireland. Don't forget to grab or listen to all of the free reference materials that I mentioned, the 4 tips to create your itinerary in episode 132, the free itineraries at irelandfamilyvacations.com/plan, and the step-by-step planning guide at irelandfamilyvacations.com/planning. If you enjoyed this podcast, I would be so grateful if you would leave a 5-star review at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you can't leave a review on your podcast app, you can always leave a review at the Ireland Family Vacations Facebook page. Or if you're an Instagram user, go ahead, snap a screenshot of the podcast that you're listening to, pop it into your Instagram stories, tag me at Ireland Family Vacations with a few kind words. I would really, really appreciate it. As always, you can reach me by email at Jody, Jody, at irelandfamilyvacations.com. Thank you again so much for listening, and until next time, slán go fóill.